If you had to choose between toilet paper and television during this COVID-19 stay-at-home order, which would you choose? TV is the great companion and the great escape for many of us at this time. And it's fun to share what we're watching with other people. And it's fun to find out what others are watching too. So I thought this was the perfect time to reach out to the Arizona man who makes a living watching movies and TV. Bill Goodykoontz is the fantastic film critic and media critic for the Arizona Republic and also does work for USA Today as well. So let's spend a couple minutes with Bill, find out what he's watching. Let's find out what he recommends you might like. Let's get some alerts from him on things he's previewed that haven't come out yet. And yes, we'll talk Trump and we will talk the Tiger King. Bill, I'll start by asking, is it really work?
It's really work. Yeah, it's a lot of work. What I do is twofold. I write about media in sort of all of its forms, whether that be covering some local development in local news or something like that. But also I write about political media. I write about Trump's rallies sometimes, or how other people are sort of become media stories. I don't write about that kind of thing from a political standpoint, only from a media standpoint. Sometimes people who don't like what I write will say that, no, this is a political story, but really it's hard not to be political with a lot of things right now, particularly with the way, I think, with the relationship that Trump has developed with the media and how it's sort of, how it's denigrated over, it started off bad and it got worse, I think. And that's sort of where we're at. But I also, I review movies and television shows and write about those as well.
So, Bill, your latest piece was very interesting. You wrote about how the best TV shows are not just entertainment.
I think that a good TV show really can feel like family to you. I remember writing this when Seinfeld was on. I knew more about what George and Elaine were doing than I knew about some of my own cousins. You're really sort of invested in this. And I remember George Clooney used to talk about when he became a movie star, people seemed a little less eager to approach him. But when he was a TV star on ER, people would just walk up to him and slap him on the back and hug him. And hey, Dr. Ross, or whatever. It finally dawned on him the difference that when he's in a movie theater, he's 40 feet tall, and they're sort of looming over you. When he's on TV, you invite him into your home every Thursday night, he and the other cast members. And I think it works both ways. I think you want to be, again, I wrote in the story, you don't want to really be a member of Tony Soprano's family, whether it's his nuclear family or his mob family, because you're going to end up either disappointed or dead, one or the other. But you kind of do want to be part of it because there's a familiarity there. And I think that's something, our whole sense of familiarity has been thrown off balance. I mean, what we're doing right now, it may be starting to feel familiar, but it's still kind of weird. And I think it's going to stay weird. We want that familiarity. Even if you've never seen the show, if you stay with it for a little while, you'll become able to recognize the characters and their types of behavior and sort of look for things and sort of feel a part of it. And I really think that people want that right now.
What is Bill Goodykoontz watching right now?
My wife and I have enjoyed going back and watching Seinfeld again. I had not revisited it in a while, and it's great as ever. I've been trying to watch movies that I didn't get to review, and then I need to catch up on a little bit. So I missed out on the initial binging craze, and I would have to say I've caught up with it with a gusto. I mean, I've watched some really great stuff. I'm about to watch the second season, which isn't out yet, of Dead to Me, which I thought was a really good show. Christina Applegate is great in that. I have found myself drawn more to some of the better TV series than just films. And part of that has to do with reviewing, a couple thousand movies over the last 10 years. There's an HBO movie coming out, Hugh Jackman and Allison Janney, and it's based on a real story about this superintendent at a Long Island school district that he was able to raise them up to number 4 in the country, but all is not as it seems. And it's really good. And Hugh Jackman I like Hugh Jackman as a general thing anyway. Allison Janney's always great. You can always depend on that. Hugh Jackman is a terrific actor who's not always in great stuff, but this is maybe his best role. And I would say this is This is something to look out for. I'll tell you something else. Another movie coming out on Amazon Prime called Sela and the Spades. It's a movie set at a private school, a boarding school. It hasn't gotten the buzz that I think it deserves and that I think that it eventually will get. And I love it when you can kind of catch a filmmaker on the way up, and you can see it and you think, this person's got something. And I think she really does. So I give that a try too.
I'll admit it. I'm that guy. The guy who hasn't watched The Tiger King. So please, enlighten me. Will I survive?
It's like one of those Twilight Zone scenarios where you're the only sane person, but when everybody else is crazy, that makes you stand out. There's a reason I think that it kind of took people by storm. And I've seen it. I watched it all. I've written a couple of columns about it. I watched the sort of lame follow-up episode that they did, that was a real bait and switch kind of thing as far as I was concerned. But it's so crazy and it's so out there and so bizarre. And I think that it hit right about the time that people were really starting to take seriously, the idea of sheltering at home. Mm-hmm. And I think they were kind of looking out the window and thinking the world's nutty out there. And it's a little bit scary. But then you can watch this and it's like, well, at least it's not this nutty.
Do you have any hidden treasures for people? Maybe some shows or movies that didn't get a whole lot of accolades, but are really something they might want to consider watching?
Well, I would try that Dracula series. It's only 3 episodes, but I think they're an hour and a half each. Part of the creative team who did Sherlock, which Benedict Cumberbatch is so good in. And of course, if you haven't seen that, see that. But see that first. It's actually better. But I love scary stuff, and I find the horror stuff right now in particular is very cathartic for some reason.
Let me ask you what you think the COVID-19 impact will be on the experience of going to the movies.
I think people are going to be afraid to go, and I think they should be for a while until we get more of a handle on this. We get better testing, we get some kind of vaccine or some preventable way of this. I would not be comfortable sitting in a theater right now that had other people in it. This is sort of a watershed moment. I think it's something that theaters have been dreading for a long time. Theaters need the distance between a wide release in theaters and when a film eventually becomes available for streaming or for rent. That's how they make their money. I mean, if it was all available at the same time, it would cut into how much they make on, concessions, which is where they really make their money. Not always, not every movie, not forever. I love going to the movies. I think most people do. But I think that things will change.
I know you touched on it before, but I didn't want to follow you too far down the rabbit hole because I wanted to make sure we could get out. You have written about the live media coverage of press conferences with the president. As a media critic, what is your opinion on these?
Originally, I wrote that we should keep, they should keep broadcasting them live, but only use it as a starting point. Because every day he says stuff that immediately has to be corrected or walked back or explained, sometimes in the same press conference. I mean, he'll get, Fauci or up there and he'll contradict what Trump has just said. Over time and over the sort of evolution of these things, now I had a follow-up column where I said we should stop broadcasting them live. I'm not saying don't cover them. Absolutely cover them. He's the president. You got to cover what he does. But don't allow these things to become glorified campaign rallies, giving out false information simply to appeal to his base. And believe me, that is not a universally popular stance. I can tell you by looking at my email. But I think that it's gotten to the point now. I've written this many times, and I really think this. Trump is not the greatest danger to the press and the country and that sort of thing. Willful ignorance is the greatest danger, and the inability to have a fact in front of you and recognize it as a fact. And I think that's frustrating, particularly for people in media when we're trying to, we're trying to inform people. That's the basic part of our job. It's always been frustrating with Trump. Now I think it's dangerous. Broadcasting these things live no longer serves, in my mind, a useful purpose. And here's the other thing. People seem to think that every time the president in the past had a press conference, the media covered it. That's simply not true. In fact, it's the exception rather than the rule. I mean, you think of, Obama or Bush or Clinton or Bush before. I mean, it was rare that we broke into the daily news for them to do a media conference or a press conference. We learned about it later, in kind of a wrap up. So this is not like some sort of divine right of kings or something. I mean, this is a fairly new thing with Trump, and I think at some point you got to cut your losses, cover it, stop showing it live.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. We'll leave it there. We'll put up some links for where people can find you and follow you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.